Hello, Internet. It is I, the Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Recaps. So, summer 2025, how was it? Oh, it was kind of underwhelming to be honest. I was expecting a bit more, like a bit more excitement. Didn't help that we didn't have like a crazy hit like we've had like the last few summers. Because if you look at the last few summers, so 2022, 2023, 2024, you had at least one movie that did crazy business that, broke the box office. People were like, oh my God. Like it became like this huge thing. 2022, it was Top Gun Maverick. 2023, it was Barbie. 2024, you had two of them. You had Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine. All these movies making 600 million plus in the States. 2025, nothing. No movie this summer came even close to that. And that definitely contributed to it not living up to expectations. And there's also the fact that some certain movies didn't perform as well as they should have. And the fact that, with the exception of May, every other summer month, so June, July, August, they all did worse than their 2024, like its counterparts. Although July was close. It was really close. But June and August were a lot weaker than 2024. And that resulted in summer, starting like so far ahead, but ultimately ending up being, I think it was like, off by like 1%. So it was basically on par, but the industry was expecting like 4 billion. That was like the magic number. And so the fact that that didn't happen, yeah, not great. So yeah. So now it's time to go through it. So in this video, this is part one. In this video, I go over all the movies that I thought were successful, that I thought did well or did, insanely well, relatively speaking. Part two, which I'll make later this week, in that video, I will go over all the movies that I think didn't do very well. And okay, I'm just going to say for some of these movies, you're going to be questioning my choices. You're going to be like, what? You call that a winner? You call that a loser? Like, yes, I'm just going to, spoiler, some of the movies in my loser video are going to be movies that were technically successful, like financially successful, but calling them winners just feels wrong to me. Like, it doesn't feel right. But I'll have my reasons as to why I put them in the loser video when I make it. But this video is all the success stories, okay? All the positive stories. So, yeah, let's get started. So, May, yeah. Well, May, it didn't start out the greatest. I mean, Thunderbolts didn't set the world on fire, unfortunately. And it wouldn't be until, well, I guess I could mention Clown in a Cornfield, because apparently the movie only cost like $1 million. Like, I looked it up. So the fact that it made like almost 10, I guess I can label that as a hit. Like a small little hit. I mean, it's not like this was like a big horror movie or anything. So I guess I can label it as a success. A small success, but still a success. But we wouldn't have our first real summer hit until mid-May, May 16th, with Final Destination Bloodlines. Okay, this movie right here, Final Destination 6, realistically, this should not have been as successful as it was. Because this movie came out a good 14 years after the last one, Final Destination 5. And Final Destination was one of those horror series that kind of dominated the early 2000s. It was like that and Saw that dominated, where you had, Final Destination 1, 2, 3, the Final Destination, and then Final Destination 5. And then the series went dormant after that until they decided to, like, but okay, let's bring it back. And originally it was going to be an HBO Max movie, but then they were like, you know what, that's a bad idea. We could actually make some money. And so they made a theatrical release. And I was like, okay, cool. Hell yeah, I'm down. Because I love the Final Destination movies. Well, the fourth one is ass. But I love these movies. I love the premise of these movies where death is the main antagonist and your main character has a big premonition where everyone dies and then they stop it in real life, and Death's just like, uh-oh, you interrupted my plan. Time to suffer. So, yeah, with all these like elaborate death traps and stuff. Like, I really enjoyed these movies. So to see it come back, I was like, hell yeah, I was on board. Little did I know how many people thought the same way I did when it came to Final Destination. This was a prime example of absence makes the heart grow fonder, because this movie opened with 51.6 million, made 138 million domestically, 313 million worldwide on a budget of 50 million. I was like, wow, damn. And I say this because, I mean, just compare this movie to the other Final Destination movies, and you see what I mean. I mean, here's like a little chart here, a line chart. As you can see, the most recent one is quite a bit ahead of the others. That's for actual numbers. I mean, it opened with like 51.6 million. See, 18, 27, 19, 6, 10. Look at that. It's a huge jump. It's ridiculous. I mean, Bloodlines made more in 3 days than Final Destination 5 made total. Like, for a sequel to do that is crazy. And domestically, I mean, it crushed the others. It's not even funny. Like, it's just not even a competition. And then worldwide, same thing. So, yeah, Final Destination is definitely back. You know what the best part? Final Destination Bloodlines was really good. I really enjoyed it. And, like, being able to watch it, like, it was so much fun. I was just like, damn, I missed this. And, yeah, I'm really happy that it did as well as it did. And Final Destination 7 got confirmed, obviously. I don't know how Warner Brothers can look at these numbers and be like, you know what? Nah, I think we're good. No. Another one was going to happen. And this was like, well, not the start of some Warner Brothers, like, you know, big 2025. That started in April with a Minecraft movie and Sinners. But this was the start of Warner Brothers' great summer 2025 that would go all the way on through August. So this was the start, and it would only get better afterwards. So, yeah, Final Destination Bloodlines, I'm glad it did as well as it did. Happy for it. Can't wait for more movies. So that was like the first major success story of summer. Then we had May 23rd, you know, Memorial Day weekend. This was the big weekend of not just summer, but the whole year. Because you had two big old movies going after each other. You had the Lilo and Stitch remake and Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. Big old showdown right here. And those two movies combined, you know, led to the biggest Memorial Day weekend ever. Period. And it was the polar opposite of last Memorial Day. Last Memorial Day was awful. Just awful. Because you had Furiosa dying out there. And then, well, sorry about that. Sorry about that background noise. It's just some guy in his car being obnoxious. But, I mean, the Garfield movie did good, but it wasn't enough to save last year's Memorial Day. This year was different. This year was a moment. So, and the moment was all because of this movie right here, the Lilo and Stitch 2025 live action remake, which ended up being the biggest movie of the summer, something I did not predict at all. So for the fourth time, I flubbed my top movie of the summer prediction. I've been wrong like every time for the last few years. 2022, I thought it was going to be Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. 2023, I thought it was going to be Guardians 3. 2024, I thought it was going to be Deadpool and Wolverine. I was wrong each time. And this summer, I thought it was going to be Superman. I thought that had the best shot. And I was wrong again. So maybe I should just stop predicting these things. But yeah, the Lilo and Stitch live action remake. This movie's interesting because it was supposed to be a Disney Plus movie. That was the plan for the longest time. But then last year, they were like, you know what? Let's not do that. I guess they realized, damn, Stitch, he's one of our most marketable characters. He's made us so much money. We put him like on everything. And you know what's really funny? So that in universe, Stitch is seen as like this ugly, disgusting creature, and yet he's one of Disney's most marketable characters. I find that amusing. But anywho, they're like, we can make some money, serious cash, if we put this in theaters. And they're like, okay, let's do it. And I thought it would like do all right, do okay, like not go crazy or anything. Boy, I was wrong. Very wrong. This opened to $146 million. This is the biggest ever for Memorial Day. It broke Top Gun Maverick's record, a record that, well, originally that movie broke Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End's record. And that movie held that record for 15 years before Top Gun broke it. And then Disney decided to break it again with this. So they have the record once again. But yeah, man, open with 146 million domestically, which is actually more money than what the original Lilo and Stitch made domestically. Ended up making 423 million domestically, over over a billion worldwide. This is our so far our only $1 billion hit of 2025. If you don't count Nia Zia 2, because that's a Chinese flick, but because in Hollywood, this is the number one movie of the year. How did that happen? Well, certainly wasn't because of quality, because people have, have had their, have mentioned that, they don't like this movie very much, and for very justifiable reasons, because this movie is infinitely inferior to the original, that it's straight up insulting at times. Like, it's just, so it felt like a neutered version of the original, and it just, just not, just wasn't good. It was ass. But that didn't matter. Quality didn't matter, because you know what mattered? Stitch. Because Stitch, you put him on anything and it will sell. That is what I've learned. And that's what I saw in real life when I went to see this movie. You know how many, I saw plenty of people, not just one person, but quite a few people have Stitch merch on, Stitch shirts, pants. Some people brought plushes. Like, it was serious. People were treating this like an event. This movie, what was supposed to be a Disney Plus movie, they treated it like it was a big time event. It was strange. But, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised. I mean, Lilo and Stitch, has been like, well, after that original movie, it became like a big franchise for Disney, with like direct-to-DVD spin-offs and the show, and there's also an anime, which is weird. And then they put Stitch on everything, so I guess the success of this shouldn't be that surprising, but still, this making $1 billion, it was unexpected. To me, it just, I don't know, it wasn't what I thought was going to happen. Definitely not. Am I happy it was that successful? Not really. But what can I do about it? And it's going to get a sequel, because of course it is. Because, come on, look at this box office. You think Disney wasn't going to make more? Like, Stitch is their golden goose. Always has been. So, yeah. So this was the big hit of the summer, the undisputed hit of the summer. I really wish it was another movie had that spot, but can't do nothing about it. So, that was Lilo and Stitch 2025. I guess Friendship, I mean, I don't know what the budget of this movie was, but I guess for like A24 standards and for what it is, it did okay. I mean, I think it opened like 4 million when it went wide, and made like 16 million total. I mean, I guess for what this is, like a small little movie, it could have been worse. So I'm not going to call it like a flop or anything. So I guess it's like a small little hit for A24. Speaking of A24, we have Bring Her Back. Yeah. This was the follow-up to Talk to Me, a movie that became like a surprise hit back in summer 2023. This didn't do as well as Talk to Me, which is kind of a shame, because, I was actually really looking forward to this, and I watched it, and my God, this is an evil movie. Just straight up evil movie. Nothing but bad vibes. But it was really good though. So I thought that, Talk to Me and its reputation would help this a bit more, but that didn't really happen. But I guess considering its budget, I mean, for what this is, like a small little horror movie, I mean, it did all right. I was just hoping it would do a lot better, though. But I'm not going to call it a flop. It's just, I thought it would do better. So, yeah. Now that was May. We are moving on to June. We are skipping that first week of June. Well, I guess I can mention Dan the Dan Evil Eye very quickly. I mean, it did way better than the other Dan to Dan like theatrical release. That didn't even make like $1 million. I think barely $1 million. This made like $5 million. So it's a big increase. Technically, it doesn't seem like it, but it is. So this is a small little hit. I mean, it's nothing compared to the success of Demon Slayer Infinity Castle. Nothing compared to that, but it's a small little success story. Now, June 13th. Okay, some more legit hits. Here we have the How to Train Your Dragon live action remake. And you know what's interesting? Both How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch, the originals, they had the same creative team, same people, actually. Where, yeah, Dean DeBlois, and yeah, Dean DeBlois. He was one of the directors of that, and then he became, yeah, him and Chris Sanders. They directed the original Lilo and Stitch, and then the original How to Train Your Dragon, and then Dean DeBlois. He decided, you know what, I'm gonna make a live action version. So, yeah, I feel that might be one of the first times that an animation director directed, a live action version of their work. I feel like that's the first time that's ever happened. I don't remember the last time it did, but yeah, this is basically DreamWorks being like, look, if Disney can make all these live action remakes of their animated movies, why can't we? So they probably looked at their catalog and I'm like, which of these would be the easiest to transfer over to live action? And they said like How to Train Your Dragon, there's enough human characters. We can make it work. So that's what they did. And yeah, people weren't thrilled about that. But I knew this movie would be a hit because, well, How to Train Your Dragon is a very lucrative franchise for DreamWorks. I mean, that original movie is seen as a classic. So obviously there was going to be that brand name recognition and the nostalgia factor. Like that was going to fuel this movie no matter what, regardless of how the internet felt. So yeah, and lo and behold, it became a hit. Go figure. Opened with 84 million domestically, made 262 million domestically, 635 million worldwide. This did better than like all of the animated movies, which is kind of sad to say, but that's what happened. And the numbers don't lie. Better opening weekend, better domestic total, better worldwide total. So, yeah, their DreamWorks' play at live action movies, live action remakes, I should say. Well, it was a success. So they're gonna make the sequel, which is coming out in 2 years. So gotta get ready for that, I guess. I mean, quality wise, I pick this over live action Lilo and Stitch any day. Any fucking day. Because at least this stayed true to the source material. I mean, it may have changed a couple things, but nothing too crazy. It didn't like completely botch the point of the original. But still, you're better off watching the original anyway. But I mean, for like all these live action remakes, this is like probably one of the better ones out there, I would say. So there's that. But yeah, not much else to say. It was a hit. Sure, it wasn't a Lilo and Stitch, but I didn't think it would be that big. I mean, Toothless is popular, but he's not on the level of Stitch. Okay, so yeah, So that was How to Train Your Dragon live action remake, one of the biggest hits of the summer and the whole year. Next, we have Materialist from A24. And this right here ended up being one of A24's biggest movies, actually. Like I guess it's a rom-com. That's what it's classified as. A rom-com, a genre that was seen as like dead theatrically. It did pretty darn well for itself. Opened with like 11.3 million, which doesn't seem like a lot, but this is actually one of A24's biggest openings. I believe the only movies that there's like a few that did better. I know Civil War did better. I don't know about. Let me look at their history. Uh, okay, I don't think it's gonna show me, but I think opening week, I know Civil War did better, and I think Hereditary did better, and I think that's it. So, yeah, but look at here, it's number, it's like quite high, only under Talk to Me, Hereditary, Lady Bird, Uncut Gems, Civil War, and Everything Ever All at Once. So it's near the top of the list. Domestically, making 36 million. Internationally, it did even better. It did really good. Ended up making 100 million worldwide. Where I'm like, wow, okay. A24, they got themselves like a low key slam dunk here, which is good because like their track record before this was looking kind of wonky for a while, but for the to have like a success like this, I mean, it's good for them. That success didn't last long, with Eddington. I'll talk about that when we get to the loser videos. But yeah, Materialist definitely like the most low key hit of summer, I would say, because it wasn't like a huge deal, but it did rock solid business. So now we move on to June 20th, where we have 28 years later. Now this had like this was this was in the same situation as Final Destination Bloodlines, where that movie there was like a 14-year gap between like the last one and the current one. Here, 18 years. I mean, you had 28 days later in 2002, or it was 2003, like in the States. 2007, you had 28 weeks later, and then nothing for a long time. Like the next movie was basically in development hell for the longest time. And it got so bad, they were just like, well, we can't name the next movie 28 months later. That's not going to work. So let's go all the way to 28 years later. That'll be easier to deal with. And so that's what they did. And eventually it got greenlit. It was made. They made two of these, back to back. The second one's coming out in January, Bone Temple. And I was like hyped for this movie. The trailer for this movie was spectacular, man. Like that hyped me up so much. I went from being like, okay, whatever, to this is going to be on my must watch list for 2025. That's how good the trailer was. So I was very hyped. Then, the movie came out, got like all those like high acclaim on the critics side at least. And box office, I say it did good considering what it is, considering how long it's been since the last one. Opened with like 30 million. Its legs weren't that good, which was definitely a mix of like hype and word of mouth kind of causing it to crash a little. As I can show you here, it really just plummeted after opening day. It had a rough second weekend. Ended up making 70 million domestically, 150 million worldwide on a budget of 60 mil. Though I'm pretty sure that budget was like shared with its immediate successor, Bone Temple. But for what this is, I mean, compared to the other, I guess 28 movies, I guess that's what we should call it. I don't know what to call it exactly. But I guess compared to the other movies, it did a whole lot better. So I would definitely label it as a success. Now, what will happen to Bone Temple? We won't know till January. Hard to say how the reputation of years later will affect Bone Temple, because 28 years later, boy, it was a weird movie. Like it was not what I thought it was gonna be. It was, which I kind of respect, honestly. I respect it being like weird and out of the ordinary, and being out of the box. Like I respect that a lot, but some people did not vibe with that. Not at all. So We'll see how it affects Bone Temple, but yeah, I would definitely call this a hit. I would very much call it a hit. So yeah. Now I move on to June 27th with F1 the movie. So the second of Warner Brothers, summer movies. This it felt it had some hurdles to climb, some hurdles to get past because this is an Apple movie, not just a Warner Brothers movie, an Apple movie. And Apple, they've had a rough time when it comes to their theatrical endeavors because every single one of their movies they've released since 2023, none of them have done well. Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, neither of them did that well. But they look like blockbusters compared to Argyle and Fly Me to the Moon. Those did disastrously to the point where they got cold feet about making Wolves a theatrical release. So they end up putting on Apple TV Plus instead. And then it was a whole thing where the director, because he couldn't trust Apple anymore, like the whole sequel got canceled and it was a mess. It was bad. So with this, I thought it looked good, but box office wise, I was like, I don't know. But, word of mouth came out about it and people were like, wow, this is really, really good. And so hype started to build and build and build. And I was like, okay, maybe we have something here. And ended up opening with 57 million. So it literally crushed all those other Apple movies. And had decent word of mouth, made 189 million domestically, did great, did really good internationally, which shouldn't be that much of a surprise considering what this movie's about. Formula One is very popular worldwide and made 600 million. This became Brad Pitt's biggest movie ever. So, beating World War Z. And quality wise, yeah, this movie was really good. It was, for a movie that was, how long was it? 2.5 hours. It really didn't feel that long. It had like a good pace to it. And it just had like this, this fun, like a summer movie vibe to it, which is probably what helped its numbers. And yeah, I mean, so Apple, they broke their curse. They broke their theatrical curse. And Warner Brothers got another hit out of it. Although this movie was like, the cost of this movie like depends. Like, I've heard like 200, 300, but whatever the budget was, I still label this as a hit. It's more of a hit than a miss because I'm looking at it here. Apparently, it's also the highest grossing auto racing movie. So the highest, car movie that has nothing to do with Fast and Furious or Cars, the animated movies. And to think, like, Formula One was seen as, like, there was a movie called Rush back in 2013, and that movie didn't do that great here. So I was thinking, oh, no, maybe, Formula One isn't, like, really a draw here. No, it is. You just need to find, like, the right people, the right, director, right vision, right everything. And then the people will show up. And that's what happened. So, yeah, F1, the movie, definitely, I would definitely label it as a hit. Definitely. So, yeah, so that was June. Now we move on to July. And we start with Jurassic World Rebirth. This movie, I was just like, why? Why? Like, I get it. Jurassic World and, Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, they all made $1 billion. It's a lot of money. So I get why you'd want to keep going, but why? Creatively, you've hit a wall. They've absolutely hit a wall. And, with Jurassic World, it was like all right, very much nostalgia baity movie, but I thought it was all right. I hated Fallen Kingdom. I especially hated the ending. Dominion wasn't that bad compared to what everybody else was saying. I thought it was better than Fallen Kingdom. But with this, I was just like, ugh, why? What are we doing? But I knew that people would show up because this movie has dinosaurs and people like dinosaurs. So, yeah, that money was going to flow. And flow it did. Open with 92 million opening weekend. I'll just open on Wednesday. It was a 5-day opening, so it was really 147 million for the 5-day. Had solid legs. Made 339 million domestically, 886 million worldwide. Sure, it did worse than the other Jurassic World movies, but still made a lot of money at the end of the day. So shows that this franchise is still alive when it probably should have died like several movies ago. So yeah, it's like this series. It's like it has like the opposite effect of like Terminator, where you had like Terminator 1 and 2, and then it was just a steady decline after that. Like people just did not want to watch Terminator movies anymore. But with Jurassic World, it's the same. People still go watch these movies, even though this one I thought was just not good. I was so bored and so uninvested in everything with this movie. I felt like a zombie sitting there. Honestly, the best part of this movie was getting to watch the Odyssey teaser before it because I knew it was attached to it and I was hyped to see that. And when I saw it, I was like, hell yeah, cool. Then I watched the movie, I was like, ugh, the whole time. So yeah, didn't like Jurassic World Rebirth. I'm not shocked it made money because again, people like dinosaurs. So yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was Jurassic World Rebirth. Now Superman, a movie I actually like. So this movie right here, Superman 2025. This movie was important because this was, well, not the official star. Technically, that was Creature Commandos, but the official star of the movies with the DCU, which was a soft reboot of the DCEU. And this is headed up by James Gunn, who made this movie. So, yeah, as you know, the DCEU, it was maybe the most mismanaged franchise, mishandled franchise, maybe ever. Maybe next to Star Wars. But yeah, like it started with like Man of Steel, which was seen as very divisive. They had Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, which were seen reviewed terribly. Then you had Wonder Woman, which people were like, oh my god, DC can actually make a good movie. And then Justice League happened, and we all know what happened with that. And then things just got like, it was very up and down. Aquaman made $1 billion, and then, you know, Shazam did okay. Birds of Prey didn't do all that great. The Wonder Woman 1984, terrible movie by the way, was um, was a victim of the HBO Max experiment and just circumstances in general. The same goes with The Suicide Squad. And then, you know, Black Adam was a flop, and then 2023 was just a freaking a graveyard. Shazam 2, Flash, Blue Beetle, Aquaman 2 all flopped hard. And that was how the DCEU died. So obviously, Warner Brothers are hoping that the DCU will get off to a better start. And I say it has, especially when it comes to quality. But box office wise with Superman, it opened with 125 million, made 354 million domestically, biggest Superman movie of all time domestically, beating Man of Steel. Internationally, it didn't do that great, and it caused it to make less money than Man of Steel. But I still call it a hit. I mean, it's the second biggest movie of the year. No, not the second. Third. It's third biggest movie of the year domestically. So how am I going to call that a flop? How am I going to call that a miss? And, you know, sure, it did worse than Man of Steel, but not that much worse, really. I mean, this, you know, after like what happened, like the end of the DCEU, like, you know, trying to like start again, it was going to be a bit of a challenge. Like people weren't just going to like rush to the theater to see the new DCU. You know, it was going to be like more of a slow climb, like a slow burn type of success story. And look, like this making like less than Man of Steel. I mean, nobody called Amazing Spider-Man a flop because it did worse than the Tobey Maguire movies. Now, Amazing Spider-Man 2, that was a bit of a different story. That was seen as a disappointment in more ways than one. But still, I think by itself, it did good. This is a good starting point for the DCU, and we'll see how things go with Supergirl next year, with Clayface, all their other various projects. Peacemaker is currently going on. Season 2 is currently going on right now. So there's a lot to be excited about with the DCU and with like James Gunn's vision. So yeah, I think quality wise, I think it's there. I think like they've nailed it so far. And plus we're getting, well, not a sequel, but a follow-up movie, Man of Tomorrow, in 2 years from now. So yeah, I'd label this as a hit. I label it as a success. Not a enormous success, but a solid success. It did what it needed to do. And it was a pretty good flick that I enjoyed quite a bit. Because unlike Man of Steel, this movie decided, to embrace the silliness and stop being so serious. It didn't make any weird decisions like having Superman break Zod's neck to save like some random family, or have like his farm dad, Jonathan Kent, being like, maybe you shouldn't have saved those people, like weird shit like that. That was not in Superman. They had way more positive vibes. So yeah, so that was July 11th. July 18th, we are skipping that. Okay, Fantastic Four First Steps. This is like one of those like are you like controversial decisions when it comes to this video, because some people are like, oh well, it didn't do as well as it should have. It wasn't. It should have done better. And to that, yeah, probably should have. But realistically, how well was a Fantastic Four movie gonna do really? I mean, let's look at the others. I mean, Fantastic Four has had a cursed history on the big screen. That's me being nice. I mean, the very first Fantastic Four movie was literally only made to keep the rights, and they never released it. People only learned about it, via the internet, where someone put it on there, and so like that's how it starts. And then you have the mid 2000s Fantastic Four movies. The first one did financially well, even though it wasn't received that well. Then you had the sequel, which did worse financially, costing more. So that's never a good combination. And then the third movie died. And then they said, okay, time to reboot. And then they made Fanforstic. And yeah, I don't need to go over Fanforstic. That Fanforstic speaks for itself. It really does. And that movie was just a disaster in every way imaginable. So yeah, so Fantastic Four, had a cursed history on the big screen. But I was looking forward to First Steps because it was from the MCU. Fox, they just fumbled that franchise so bad, constantly. It was unbelievable. It led to the point where people called Incredibles the only good Fantastic Four movie. So, yeah. But I was hopeful. I was thinking Marvel was going to get this right. They're going to do this justice. And I think they did do it justice. I think this is easily the best Fantastic Four movie, and an enormous step up from Fanforstic. But really, after Fanforstic, there's nowhere to go but up. So it wouldn't have taken much to be better than that. But I say this movie was very solid. And box office wise, I say it did relatively solid. Okay, opened with 117 million. Yes, it was very front loaded. Yes, it had a rough second weekend, 67% drop, which is never good. But the other Fantastic Four movies didn't hold on that well either. This isn't much worse than Fanforstic or Rise of Silver Surfer. They fell about the same. But it was able to stabilize a bit later on. It ended up making 273 million domestically, 520 million worldwide, which is quite a bit more than the other Fantastic Four movies. And compared to the other 2025 MCU movies, this is the most successful one. I mean, it way better than Brave New World and Thunderbolts. So I say there's more positives than negatives with this performance. I mean, yeah, obviously there's going to be the curse of high expectations. But high expectations, they really shouldn't have been that high in the first place. No, what we really should look at is how the 2026 MCU movies are going to do, namely Spider-Man Brand New Day, and more importantly, Avengers Doomsday, because Fantastic Four is playing a big role in Doomsday for obvious reasons. You know, Victor Von Doom and all that. That was the big post-credit scene of First Steps. So we gotta know how that will do, and I guess by extension how Secret Wars will do, because this movie they're planning on making a sequel to this, and the hope is that with Doomsday and Secret Wars, you know, their roles in that will help the sequel, you know, make more money, which seems like a solid plan. But yeah, for the MCU quality wise, for like I guess this is technically the start of Phase 6, although no one really pays attention to the phases anymore. I say it's a good start. It's a good starting point. I guess like this and Thunderbolts. I was like, yes, okay, Marvel, they're back. They got quality on their side again, but the box office really isn't quite there yet. It might take more time. You know, maybe some of that audience will just won't come back. You're just gonna have to accept that this is the new normal. I don't know, but yeah, Fantastic Four First Steps. I'm not calling it a flop or a miss or a disappointment. I will label it as a hit because again, there are more positives than negatives here. So yeah, and that was really like the last big money summer movie, because like after that, like in August, things took a dive, like a serious dive. But there were still some relative decent performers. One that did really, really good that I'll talk about a little later. But together, that didn't do bad. I'm sorry you got to witness this poster again, but you know, for what this is, you know, didn't do bad. I mean, for Neon, it became like one of their bigger movies. So, and you know, watching it, it was a interesting time. I mean, I liked it. It had like this almost like low key funny vibe to it. Like I don't know, there's like weird vibe to it that I just kind of like, you know, liked. And yeah, I say, you know, it did pretty well, you know, for itself, you know, for the small movie that it is. Then the rest of August, I mean, Bad Guys 2, yes, it did worse than the first movie. I thought it would do like on par, maybe a bit better, but just didn't. That's the thing with DreamWorks sequels. I think Shrek 2 is the only one that's avoided this. Every other DreamWorks sequel, so Kung Fu Panda 2, How to Train Your Dragon 2, even Madagascar 2, all of them did worse than their predecessors, at least domestically. Internationally, they did better. But I find that so strange. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's considering the quality of some of these sequels, like how good some of the sequels are. Like, something's not adding up. And that's the same case here, because Bad Guys 2, I thought, was pretty darn good. So the fact that it did worse perplexes me. But I guess that's just a DreamWorks curse. But, you know, even though it did worse than the first movie, it did solid, technically. Almost 21 point, basically 22 million. Made 80 million domestically, 207 million worldwide on a budget of 80 million. I would label that as a success. I mean, it still has some international markets to go through, and that'll cause its numbers to, you know, grow even bigger. So it'll only be off by a bit. It's not like a crazy decline. It's not like a drop by like you know, it's not like it made like, I don't know, like a fourth of the original movie's total. Like, this is like a small drop off, acceptable drop off for a sequel. So yeah, will there be a Bad Guys 3? I mean, I think there is. I think that is the plan. But they probably won't like officially greenlight it until a little later, because that was the case for this movie. So like, I mean, this movie was literally announced last year. So yeah, we'll see when they'll announce a Bad Guys 3 or a show or anything, because I don't think this will be the end of this series. I feel like it's going to keep going, because it has a solid fan base, really strong following. So DreamWorks would be kind of stupid to just drop it. But yeah, I say Bad Guys 2 did all right. So did Naked Gun. For this being like it's not a revival of the Naked Gun series, which started, Leslie Nielsen, the late great Leslie Nielsen. With this, I mean, expectations were like, eh, because it's bringing back an old property, having like Liam Neeson be Frank Drebin Jr. And people are just like, I don't know, this could be ass. But then the movie came out and people were just like, damn, this movie's funny as hell. And when I watched it, same thing. I thought it was funny as hell. I laughed quite a few times. So the movie definitely did its job. And box office wise, I don't know, Naked Gun, the originals, I mean, they weren't like crazy successful. They did all right, but they weren't like, you know, big, massive comedy hits. So with this, it was the same. It wasn't a massive comedy hit. It did okay. Almost 16.8 million, made like 52 million domestically, 101 million worldwide. I think the budget of like 42 million. Not a bad result, especially considering comedy has been like just trying its damnness to come back to theaters, trying its damnness to be like theatrical again. And I mean, this is a good step, good first step, especially with, like spoof movies. We'll see. We'll see how Scary Movie 6 does next year. We'll see how Spaceballs 2 does the year after that. We'll see how they do. We'll see if they can really like, bring comedy back to, I guess, like the box office glory days, if they can ever be reclaimed again. But weirder things have happened. So yeah, I said Naked Gun 2025. It did all right. So August started out okay, got better the next weekend with Freakier Friday, which sure did worse than the first movie, which came out like good 22 years ago, but still did all right for itself. 28 million opening weekend. It's made 92 million so far. I don't think it's gonna go much further than that. Made 150 million on a budget of 42 million. Yeah, solid result. It's just, I'm just kind of surprised Disney wouldn't make a movie so cheap these days. They've been exclusively in the blockbuster business for years, making these expensive ass movies. But this time they're like, you know what? Let's go cheap for once. So, yeah, I guess for what this is, it did solid. And, it helps comedy at the box office, live action comedy. It helps it out. With this and Naked Gun, trying to bring it back, this, doing something positive at least for the genre. So, yeah, but yeah, it did solid. But Weapons was the big standout of August by far and away. This was the big winner of August for good reason, because this movie had a lot of hype going for it, had a lot of hype fueling it, because the trailer was really fucking good. And it was made by Zach Krieger, the man behind Barbarian. So people really liked Barbarian. So people wanted to see his follow-up movie. And Warner Brothers was smart with this movie. They made sure to release as little information as possible. No one knew what this movie was about, truly. They made everything very vague. Like, it was like a mystery that you wanted to solve. And by the time the movie came out, it had high acclaim. And that acclaim led to high box office. It opened with 43.5 million, which is a great result for an original horror flick. And well, it's more like it's not really a horror. I guess it is a horror flick. But after that, its legs were really good for the genre. Made 149 million domestically, 263 million worldwide on a budget of 38 million. It crushed, demolished Barbarian. So yeah, Zach Krieger definitely has a future. I mean, he's about to make a Resident Evil movie next year, and I feel like because his name is involved, that movie's going to get a lot of hype too. So, yeah, so Zach Krieger literally took like the same path as Jordan Peele, going from doing like comedy, like sketch comedy and whatnot, to making horror movies. So maybe more like comedic writers should do that, because it seems to be a solid path. But Yeah, and Weapons I thought was a really solid flick too. I was invested. I liked how the movie didn't try to hold my hand, try to explain things to me, and maybe try to like figure things out on my own. And the movie was like done in a way where it was like different perspectives and everything, which I always like. And yeah, really solid flick, and I'm glad it was successful. And I'd like to see what more Zach Krieger can do. So, and this was like the end of some Warner Brothers like great summer 2025. So yeah, started strong and it ended strong, and their 2025 is continuing to be strong. I mean, Conjuring Last Rites crushed expectations. Now, one battle after another, I'm not too sure about that movie. I want it to succeed, I do, but I feel like it won't. But maybe some of that good luck can rub off on it. That's what I'm hoping for. And if that happens, then with the exception of like the first quarter of 2025, Warner Brothers 2025, the box office has been flawless. So, yeah. So we'll see what happens with One Battle After Another, which is coming out this weekend. So it'll be do or die time by then. But yeah, Warner Brothers, they had a hell of a summer. Definitely had a hell of a summer. And there's not much else to really talk about after that. I don't know. I guess the Shin Godzilla re-release. I guess it did all right. Did just solid for what it is. Did better than like the actual, the original release. Opened bigger. So there's that, but it's like a very small success. And then a movie I didn't. Well, none of these movies, absolutely not. But the movie I didn't make a prediction video for solid reasons. I'll talk about it again. K-pop Demon Hunters sing-along event. So this Netflix movie that I thought would probably be popular for like a few weeks and then just disappear. That's not what happened. This movie was popular for months. Came out in June. People were still going crazy about it in August. That's not normal, especially for like a streaming movie. It became Netflix's biggest movie ever on their service. And then they decided, you know what? Let's do something, different. Let's do like a little special event. And they released it in theaters for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. And it was a big, like, the sing-along version of the movie. And it ended up being number one at the box office. Yeah, a Netflix movie. Number one at the box office. It was unprecedented. There was only not even that many theaters. Like, I looked at like my local theaters, see how it was doing. This shit was like damn near selling out. Like, there was like real hype, real demand for this thing. So the fact that this was number one at the box office, when it released, it was a big story. I was like, wow, this movie's really popping off. That like a very limited release would do like this well. I mean, that's better than some wide releases have been able to do. Like, that's really impressive. Now, will Netflix do something like this again? I don't know. They should. It'd be smart. You can make some easy headlines. But Netflix obviously going to focus on like the streaming aspect, but really they should do some more theatrical releases like this for some of their movies. I think it would be smart. But Netflix is gonna Netflix, I guess. But yeah, I had to talk about this again because it was a big deal. A very big deal. And I don't know what else. Jaws, the re-release, I guess I can talk about that. I mean, it did really well. It damn near won the box office. Labor Day weekend, which shows you how weak that weekend was. Like 9.6 million opening. Maybe it was like 8 million. Whatever number. It still did really well for a re-release. It helped that it was like the 50th anniversary, so it made a little more important than normal. And re-releases have been doing pretty darn well this year. I mean, look at Revenge of the Sith, up of 25 million, which is crazy for a re-release. So, re-releases, they're a nice, solid way to make a quick buck without putting in a whole lot of effort. So, yeah, obviously they're going to keep doing it because it's quick, easy money, which, makes sense. And that's it. that's the end of all the success stories of summer. All the movies I thought were success stories. Now, part 2, losers. I'm going to make that Thursday. That's where I'm going to talk about like all the movies I thought underperformed or just straight out bombed. And a lot of those movies are going to be small movies, so I'm not going to spend too much time on a lot of them. But for others, like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can guess what I'm going to be talking about. Maybe a certain Pixar movie, maybe a certain, horror sequel that switched genres. Maybe a certain Marvel movie, a certain Tom Cruise movie, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, you can stay tuned for that Thursday. But yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. You want to check out more videos like this? I got playlists on the homepage. All previous recap videos I made on the channel this year, the past few years. You want to watch any of them, go right ahead. You want to watch my other summer recaps I made like over the last few years, you can go right ahead. Box office predictions. I predict box office for movies. Every movie I covered here, I made a prediction video for. So if you want to watch any of those prediction videos or any other ones I've made, over the on the channel, or you want to look forward to my new prediction videos like this weekend with One Battle After Another and Gabby's Dollhouse the movie and The Strangers Chapter 2. Watch those, stay tuned for those. Want to watch all the other prediction videos I made, go right ahead. It's also the canceled series where I went over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. It's 250 episodes of that. So you want to binge watch that whole series from beginning to end. I highly suggest you do that, so go do it. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.